Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about volume of cones. And so just how we did with all the other um, volume prisms, here we have volume is equal to the big base times height of the prism. But because it's not a prism, exactly, it doesn't have this. It doesn't have two bases. If you notice, the base is this circle down here. And if you notice, that same base is the same all the way to the top, but the original base of the original circle is a little smaller up here, and it's a little smaller down here, such and such. So it changes size. And to fix that or to take that into account, we divide by 3 or multiply by 1/3. Now we can leave it like this, but remember, the base is always going to, for a cone, is always going to be a circle. So really the formula that we remember for volume of a cone is volume is equal to 1/3 the base, which is a circle. So area of a circle is just pi radius squared times height of the prism, or in this case the cone. And so this is the formula that we remember for volume of cones. So let's go ahead and do some practice problems. So let's take a look at this first problem down here. And so this problem says, find the volume of the cone below, and we're given some information. So we're going to start off by writing volume is equal to 1/3 pi radius squared times height. And we're going to figure out, do we have all of this information? So let's start with height. Height of the cone is going to be perpendicular to the base. So this right here represents the height of my cone. So height is 20, so I have that. So we can give that a check. Second thing is, do we have the radius? Now, yes and no. So if we look up here, what we do have is the diameter. And remember, the diameter is going to be twice the radius, or the radius is half of the diameter. And so since the diameter is 9, half of that would give me the radius. So half of 9 is 4.5, or 4.5. And so here I have everything that I need to substitute back into my equation. So the first thing I'm going to do is exactly that. I'm going to substitute it back into the equation. So we have the 1/3. I have my pi. I just found the radius to be 4.5, and that's going to be squared, times height of my cone, which in this case is 20. And so I simply got to put all this in the calculator. Now, I'm going to put it and leave it in terms of pi. So I'm going to put everything except pi into my calculator. And so when I do that, I get volume is equal to 135 pi. And we're talking about volume here, so it's going to be units cubed. So in this case, millimeters cubed. So let's take a look at another problem. So here we have find the volume of the cone below. Now this one's a little bit different because if you notice, we're not given the height of the cone. What we are given is this slant height. And we're going to use this slant height along with the radius to find the height of my cone, or h. And if you remember back to Pythagorean theorem, when we label a right triangle, we have a squared, we have b squared, and then we have c. And so what we're looking for here is a, which is what we're going to call the height. And so that's going to be set up because we're looking for a. We're going to take the square root of c squared, which 11.4 squared, minus 7 squared, and that's going to give us our a. That's going to give us a height. So when we put that in the calculator, we get the square root of 80.96. And when we take the square root of that, we get 8.998. And so we have the height. And so remember, volume is equal to 1/3 pi, my radius squared, times height. So height is what we just found. The radius we already knew was 7. And so all that's left to do is simply substitute it back into my equation. So we have 1/3 pi, the radius, which in this case is 7, squared, times the height, which my height I found to be 8.998. So once again, I'm going to put all of that in my calculator, but I want to leave it in terms of pi. So I'm putting everything in the calculator except pi. So I'm not putting pi in my calculator. So when I put in the calculator, I get an answer of 146.97 pi units cubed. And so we're going to take a look at one last problem. So this says, and now this is an application problem. It says a cone has a volume, so they're already giving me what the volume is, of 1,309 centimeters cubed. If the height, so I know the height of the cone is 8, find the radius. So we're looking here for r. So if I have my volume formula, my 1/3 pi radius squared times height, I know the height, I know the volume, I'm going to have to look for the radius. And so what we're going to start with is, so here's my volume, here's the height. We're going to start by substituting in what we know. And so that's our step 1. So here my volume is 1309. The 1/3 is still there, the pi. The radius is what we don't know, so we're going to leave it as r squared. And the height we found to be 8. And so the first thing is we're going to do is we're going to, because everything on the right side is multiplying together, the opposite of multiplication would be division. And so what we're going to do is we're going to divide over the 8, the pi, and the 1/3. And so we're going to start by taking one number at a time. You can do it all together, but in this case, we're going to take it one at a time. So for me to cancel this 1/3, I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. Because when I multiply by 3, the 1/3 and the 3 are going to cancel on the right. And I'm going to move the 8 in front, 8 pi radius squared. And on the left side, I have 3927. So the next step is to divide everything by 8 pi. And I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 8 pi at the same time. So divide the right side by 8 pi, left side by 8 pi on the right side. The 8 and the pi cancel, and I'm left with r squared, or radius squared. On the left side, 3927 divided by 8 pi gives us 156.25. Now to get r by itself, we have to take the square roots. And so the square root of r is simply r, or the radius. And the square root of 156.25 gives us a radius of 12.5.